ABC General Hospital Spoilers show that the hallway seemed longer than usual, stretching out into an unusual silence for a house that's usually full of kids. Wiley hadn't meant to go against the rules. He didn't wake up that morning with any sense of rebellion in his heart. He was just curious, plain and simple, that made him move toward the closed door at the end of the hallway. His mother had told him that the room was private, that Drew needed to rest, and that some things were complicated and meant for adults. Kids can tell when something's being kept from them, and that feeling of secrecy speaks louder than any warning. Amelia was sleeping downstairs, and Willow's voice came softly from her office as she handled one more political call, mixing in another promise about integrity and leadership she'd said many times before. For the first time that afternoon, nobody was paying attention to him. The doorknob was cool under his small hand. He turned it slowly, thinking maybe he'd find darkness or nothing at all. Instead, he walked into a room that just felt different from the rest of the house. Drew lay in the middle of the bed, motionless and strong, his body stiff against the white sheets. His eyes were open, but not quite awake and not quite asleep. Wiley just stood there, completely still. There was a strange stillness in the air, too quiet to be natural. He had seen people who were sick before. He had been in hospital rooms where machines beeped steadily and nurses offered quiet comfort. But this time, it felt different. This silence felt like it was stuck, held tight with no way out. Drew looked over at him, slowly, deliberately. Wiley's heart started pounding so loud he could hear it ringing in his ears. He whispered Drew's name quietly, not sure if he should say Dad or something different, unsure what place the still man held in his life now. Drew blinked once, then twice, then 3 times, one right after the other. It wasn't just by chance. It needed to be done right away. Wiley stepped back, a chill running through him like a sudden splash of cold water. Drew's lips shifted a little, but no words came out. His arms wouldn't lift. His chest moved up and down, but the rest of his body stayed still. It felt like he was trapped inside his own skin. Fear rushed through Wiley's small body. He knocked the rolling tray next to the bed, and the noise that came after felt way too loud for the small room. The tray slipped. The syringe Willow had set down a few minutes ago slid on the metal surface, making the small glass vial wobble once before it fell off the edge. Time stretched out, turning into pure horror. The vial slipped from her hand, crashing onto the hardwood floor and breaking into sparkling pieces. A clear liquid stretched out in a thin, telling layer. The syringe slipped and slid under the dresser. Wiley let out a sharp gasp and dropped to his knees without thinking, tears streaming down as he shakily reached for the scattered glass shards. A shard cut his skin, but he hardly felt it. He kept whispering, "I'm sorry," the words falling quietly into the empty room. Drew's eyes grew wide and he blinked fast. If Wiley had been older, he might have seen the fierce spark starting to flare in them. It was hope. It was about surviving. That was the first sign that the system meant to keep him quiet was starting to break. Footsteps came closer down the hallway. Wiley jumped up right when Willow's shadow appeared in the doorway. She took it all in at once. The open door, the broken vial, the wet stain creeping across the floor, and her son's pale face. For just a brief moment, her calm broke apart. That vial wasn't just some random medicine. The control was measured in milliliters. The suppression was planned out to the exact second. Without it, the chemical grip she had on Drew's frozen body would start to fade. She knelt down, speaking in a calm voice that scared Wiley even more than if she had yelled. She asked him what he had touched. He said that Drew had glanced at him. That detail hit me harder than the shattered glass. Willow's eyes slowly met Drew's face. He looked into her eyes with a focus she hadn't noticed in weeks. Missing a dose would make a difference. She understood the pharmacology well enough that she couldn't deny it. The routine demanded careful attention, and staying consistent was key. Breaking the usual pattern could help the nervous system find its way back to balance. She sent Wiley away softly, telling him everything was okay, and told him to wash his hands and try to forget what he had just seen, but upstairs, things were far from fine. She picked up the broken glass slowly, her fingers trembling before she managed to calm them down. There wasn't any backup right away. Getting more would need some explanation. The logs would reveal some irregularities. Sidwell's expectations hung heavy over her climb in politics. In public, you had to stay calm and collected, but behind closed doors, you could be harsh and unkind. Hours went by, and she started noticing small changes. Drew blinked with more focus, each one slower and more intentional. He breathed a bit deeper, like something inside him was adjusting. She got a replacement vial by spinning a mix of lies and half-truths, coming back right as dusk started to darken the sky. When she came back to the bed with the syringe, she noticed it's something pushing back. Just barely there, but you can still tell for sure. There was a tightness just under his skin. The drug hit his bloodstream, but she felt like she wasn't ahead of the timeline anymore. Something had changed. Downstairs, Wiley sat quietly on the couch, turning over the image of Drew's frantic blinking in his mind. He didn't really know what he had messed up, just that he saw fear in a grown man's eyes, and it reflected back his own. Upstairs, Drew paid close attention to the slight tingling starting in his fingers, a small feeling that had been gone for so long it almost felt like a miracle. The missed dose had left a small window open. Willow stood next to him, looking down at the man she had hurt, the man she'd quieted to keep her freedom and chase her dreams. She told herself she was keeping things in order. But glass doesn't break silently without causing some kind of impact. The house didn't feel like a contained space anymore. It felt like being in a pressure chamber. As night fell over the walls, one thing became clearer than any political promise or a mother's comforting words. Time was moving again. The suppression wasn't complete anymore. Drew was fully awake now, no longer just a possibility. It was coming closer, slow and careful, and just one little slip, a scared kid's hesitant step, had started it all. Wiley never intended to be the keeper of a secret big enough to ruin someone's whole life. He was just a kid, drawn by a quiet curiosity, who ended up in a room he'd been told to stay away from. What he saw, and what he heard next, changed the simple innocence of his world. The broken vial was just the start. In the days that followed, he paid closer attention. People often underestimate children simply because they're small, because their questions seem simple, and because their footsteps don't make much noise. Willow thought she had things back under control after fixing the broken dose, adjusting the schedule, and sealing the crack in her system. But she hadn't expected the quiet observer who was now walking through the house, eyes wide and taking in everything around her. Wiley started to see the pattern. The door was locked. The timing was just right. The quiet phone calls. His mother's voice softened when she talked about responsibility and leadership, but it turned cold the moment she walked into Drew's room. One night, when sleep wouldn't come, Wiley quietly got out of bed and stopped once more by that door. This time, he didn't go in. He listened carefully. Willow's voice slipped softly through the small crack by the hinge. She wasn't talking to Drew like she loved him. She was admitting it, calmly, with arrogance. She talked about the shooting, the drug that kept him under control, and how it was absolutely necessary to protect everything she was trying to build. She talked about power and timing, saying Drew would never wake up as long as she kept strict control. Wiley suddenly felt the floor shift under his feet. The pieces of memory he held, Drew's quick blinking, the broken vial, his mother staying calm, clicked into a harsh realization. Drew wasn't sick. Drew was being treated like that. The truth hit him so hard it took his breath away. And just when he thought he had learned enough, he caught something else in the days after. Sidwell's voice on the speakerphone, quiet and almost impressed, talking to Willow not just about politics but about her toughness, her courage, and her readiness to step up where others wouldn't. There was a strange edge to the tone, like something personal hiding behind the plan. Sidwell didn't just admire her ambition, he was attracted to her cold determination. Wiley couldn't quite grasp how adults showed attraction, but he definitely picked up on the tension. He realized that Sidwell's focus on Willow acted like another layer of control, almost like a second skin. It wasn't just about holding Drew back anymore. It was about making sure there was a future, a partnership held together by secrets and shared corruption. The house seemed colder once that thought hit. Wiley started seeing Drew in a different light. He didn't think the blinks meant confusion. To him, they were signals. He started counting them, repeating the pattern in his head. 3 short, 3 long, 2 short. He didn't know Morse code, but he could tell there was meaning behind it. Drew was trying to get his point across, just trying to get by. That knowledge sat heavy on Wiley's chest. He cared deeply for his mother. He loved the side of her that tucked him in, kissed his forehead, and told him everything would be safe. But he couldn't bring himself to connect that kindness with the cold cruelty he had come across. The conflict ate away at him quietly, night after night. And then he suddenly thought of Alexis. Alexis always took him seriously, and never brushed him off as just a kid. Alexis knew what rules meant, what justice was, and that actions had consequences. She knew how to help people when they were in danger. Wiley's choice wasn't about rebelling. It started with fear, and from something else, loyalty to the truth. He waited for the right moment, when Willow got caught up in Sidwell's visit, and their talk slipped into quiet, tense whispers in the study. Sidwell's presence in the house felt like it was pushing in, tense. He walked through the rooms like he owned the place, and it made Wiley uneasy. Wiley could clearly see the admiration in his eyes when he looked at Willow, and that scared him more than if he had been angry. This was a partnership. This was an alliance. This was a future made without any regret. Wiley quietly slipped away, holding a phone tightly in his hand. His fingers shook as he called Alexis. When she picked up, he nearly hung up right away. Then he pictured Drew in his mind stuck there, blinking, waiting, and finally pushed the words out. He told her about the medicine, about the injections. He was thinking about what he had overheard. At first, there was just silence on the other end. Then Alexis's voice shifted, gaining a sharp edge of urgency. She asked questions with care. Wiley gave the best answer he could. Every sentence seemed to both betray his mother and save Drew all at once. When the call finished, Wiley felt a strange mix of relief and fear like never before. Upstairs, Willow chuckled quietly at something Sidwell said, not realizing that the balance she had worked so hard to keep was already starting to change. She thought she had everything under control: the drug routine, the rise in politics, Sidwell's sway, and Drew keeping quiet. She had no idea that the tiniest, most overlooked part of her plan had just exploded. Alexis acted fast right after that call. She felt a jolt run through her body as the meaning sank in. If even half of what Wiley said was true, this went beyond just manipulation. It felt like being locked up. It felt like someone tried to commit murder that played out over a long stretch of time. The fact that a child was the one who revealed it made the whole thing even more horrifying for her, something she struggled to fully take in. By the time Willow realized something was off when she caught that uneasy vibe and saw Wiley dodge her eyes, the wheels of exposure were already in motion. The change she thought would give her control ended up making her more vulnerable. Sidwell's fascination had given her a false sense of courage, making her reckless. And Wiley's courage had broken through the illusion. The shock that was coming wouldn't be quiet or gentle. It would be really intense. When control based on lies falls apart, it doesn't just disappear quietly, it breaks. And this time, the truth wasn't lying helpless on a bed. It was talking. Wiley never thought he'd be the one to confront his own mother, but when the moment arrived, his calmness unsettled Willow more than any shout ever could. After hearing her confession and putting the pieces together about Drew's condition, Wiley stopped feeling confused and realized there was deliberate control involved. He realized the injections didn't actually treat anything, they just kept things quiet. Drew's silence wasn't natural, and Sidwell getting closer to Willow wasn't just about politics. It also had to do with the cold, sharp way she had handled things. Knowing all this, Wiley gave Willow an ultimatum. If she didn't stop drugging Drew and let him heal, he would spill the whole truth. Willow's face showed genuine shock. She expected rivals, investigators, maybe even Drew to expose her, but never thought her own child would do it. Wiley's steady gaze showed this wasn't just some kid's empty threat. It marked a boundary. He had already talked to someone he trusted. Willow's fear grew faster when she realized Alexis might know. For the first time, she felt control slip right through her fingers. Willow didn't feel like confessing right away. Instead, she wanted to take a step back and rethink things. She told Wiley she would make things right. Under that promise, a new plan quickly took shape in her mind. Lower the dosage, guide Drew's slow recovery, and change the story before it could ruin her. If Drew got better while she was in charge, she could call it a medical breakthrough instead of a crime falling apart. It was a compromise made out of desperation. But making this change came with a huge risk. Sidwell looked up to Willow because she always stood her ground. He was drawn to her strength and careful thinking, and it had grown into something real, something he cared about. If he felt she was pulling back or throwing off their shared path, he wouldn't just let it go without saying something. A recovering Drew was seen as a risk. When Drew started talking, you just knew trouble was coming. If Drew said Sidwell knew about it or pushed for it, everything Sidwell was building politically could fall apart in a flash. Upstairs, small changes started to happen. The next injection Willow gave was lighter. Drew's blinking became sharper. His fingers twitched with a faint tension. The fog in his mind cleared just enough for him to focus and form a clear intention. He wasn't aware of Wiley's ultimatum, but he could tell something had changed in the chemical control. The prison was starting to fall apart. Downstairs, Wiley was waiting. He had clearly separated what was right and wrong, what meant love, and what just meant going along with things. Willow found herself caught in the middle of a closing storm. Hold on to her dream and risk losing her son for good, or let Drew succeed and risk dragging Sidwell down with her. The ultimatum didn't just threaten to spill secrets, it pushed them into a decision that would spark fallout reaching well beyond their own house.